I just got done watching 6 hours worth of Justice League. And you might be asking yourselves, why 6 hours? Isn't the Zack Snyder cut, isn't that just 4 hours, right, bro? Well, no. So you see, to do this video and for my own enjoyment, quite frankly, I figured let's do this right. I could come on here like most people are doing, just watch the 4 hour Snyder cut and just do a video on it and just say, oh, well, I remember it. No. That's not going to quite cut it. We're not going to go by memories. We're going to go by watching them back to back. So I am fresh off of watching them back to back. Because it's 2017. That's more than 3 years ago at this point. And I need to be refreshed on this. It was late 2017. I can't be expected to remember everything. Now, remember, I did enjoy the movie. I remember a lot of people gave me shit in the comments for daring to enjoy a movie. But I figured, I'm not like a lot of people. I don't take comic book movies so ultra seriously. I am a big comic book fan. I like DC. I like Marvel. I like Marvel a little bit better. But as many people know, I've been very critical on Marvel. But we're not going to go through all that because I've got tons of videos on the Marvel films and you could go and watch them if you want. But I liked Justice League. But I heard that it had a very troubled production. It did. A lot of different things happened. I didn't know exactly the whole story. There were so many things being passed around. But the whole real story is that Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide. She passed away, unfortunately, during the filming of the movie, and the directorial duties were taken over by Joss Whedon. Now, the funny thing about this is a lot of this movie was already complete. I'd only needed like a few more scenes or something along those lines. It's not quite clear what was done, what wasn't done, but most of the movie was already done. Obviously, Zack Snyder, he had a story all spread out. It was a story that he wrote. He actually is credited with the story as well as being a director. And he ended up getting directorial credits in the end. But it seems like after watching the Snyder Cut, really a lot of those direction credits really should have went to Joss Whedon, because the 2017 theatrical release of Justice League is a vastly different film. Now, there's a lot of it that is similar, that is the same. It's not a completely different movie, like completely, but then again, it sort of is. So I wrote down a bunch of stuff, and there are some pretty big drastic changes. There's a lot of similar things, like who is on the Justice League. You still have Flash, you still have Batman, still have Wonder Woman. You still have Aquaman. You still have all the key players there. Everyone's pretty much the same. Superman still comes back to life. He's still resurrected. But there are other things, such as Cyborg, who I haven't even mentioned yet. His entire arc and how he even came to be was just drastically changed. And the purpose of the whole plot and how it goes about is different. The ideas are very much the same, such as the Mother Cubes, which is the MacGuffin in this film. That is way more than just a MacGuffin. It is like the sole thing here that is like driving everything that's going on. And Steppenwolf is still the villain, but dear God, is he so much better looking in this film. I do not know how the hell Joss Whedon and the studio, at Warner Brothers, that they looked at Steppenwolf and decided, you know what? That looks like complete shit, because he looks fucking awesome. I am just going to say he looked awesome. And I remember that was something that I said in my original review. I said in the theatrical release review, the only thing that we didn't have anything to compare it to. We didn't know what anything really looked like. I mean, maybe if you had like the Blu-ray, they might have shown it in the extras, but I didn't see any of that stuff. But Steppenwolf's design in the theatrical release looked kind of dweeby. The horns and everything, he kind of looked like Maleficent, just not good. And then you take a look at this guy and how he looks in this Snyder Cut, and he just looks badass. And you still have the same. I have to look at his name here because I couldn't quite remember it. Syrian Hines, who's like a veteran film actor. He's done a lot of voiceovers, appearances in films. This guy's voice, he was like completely neutered in this film. He sounded just like tired in the theatrical release upon comparison. In this Snyder's cut, his voice is just so much more commanding. He sounds lethal. He sounds deadly. He sounds like a real threat. And throughout this film, they built him up as a stronger villain. Not that he seemed really weak, but he seemed a lot more fierce throughout this film. And that's maybe because he has more screen time, more dialogue. But the one thing that he's after in this film that drastically changes everything is the mother boxes. As I mentioned, those MacGuffins have a similar purpose, but they're a lot different this way because they also act as a gateway to bringing Darkseid into this film. And Darkseid was not even anywhere to be found in Justice League. We had heard about it, which was actually something that I was kind of confused about when I saw the theatrical release in 2017. I was like, there's not going to be any Darkseid? Why wouldn't you want Darkseid in your film? I can understand maybe that you want to keep Darkseid for a future film. And see, that's something else that I didn't even know. I think I had known about it, but I think I forgot about it when I went to see the film because there's just so much out there as far as comic book movies. I can't be expected to maintain all that. And then, trying to follow the Star Wars stuff, everything just kind of got all mixed up and I kind of forgot. But this film was originally supposed to be a two-parter. And you could definitely see that along the 4 hours. There's so much content here. There's so much story, especially with Cyborg. And what they did was like try to mash everything into 2 hours because that's exactly how long the theatrical release is. It is, in fact, exactly half of what we got in the Snyder's Cut, which is 4 hours. And that might seem excessive. And in certain ways it is. I would have liked to see a happy compromise because 4 hours is a very, very long movie. And for it to be just one big, long, run-on sentence. And that's maybe not fair because it really isn't. Because when you watch the 4 hours, everything flows together very nicely. Nothing feels jumbled up. And then looking back at the theatrical release, it really does feel very like jumbled up and mishmashed down, like I said, into a 2-hour format. Now, it's very noble that they tried to get this into a decent film running time. And, when you kind of think about like Avengers Endgame, and I talked about how that's a good film, but it went on way too long. The 3-hour mark was not somewhere where they needed to be for that film. I said they could have cut a lot out going after the Infinity Stones, showing us every little thing and going through every single little detail, every little nook and cranny, leaving no stone unturned. Well, you kind of do get that feeling here a little bit with the Snyder Cut where it's a lot. There's a lot of, dialogue going on here to explain the story, but it actually really needed to be there. It did. I mean, they could have definitely cut it down a bit. But I guess Zack kind of felt like, well, this is going to be streaming. I'm going to put the movie out there. I might as well let everyone see my original vision. I can respect that because this is how Zack wanted his film to be. And it was neutered. It was, totally cut up and edited to a point where really it's not even the same film anymore when you think about it. Like I said, a lot of the same things still happen here. It'll be recognizable to those who see the theatrical film and go back like me and watch the theatrical release and watch the Snyder Cut. I don't think it really matters which one you watch first because the idea is just to see the comparison, which I greatly recommend if you have time to do that. Set some time aside and go do that because I think you'll really appreciate just, how different these films are. And you see two directors with two totally different visions. And in the end, you see that Snyder kind of has a little bit more appreciation for the lore of the DC universe. Bringing in Darkseid. And you don't get to see too much of Darkseid, but just enough where you want to see him in a part 2. You want to see him in another movie. And so what we've got here kind of is two parts being smushed together because Snyder, decided that he had to work with the fact that there was going to be a Batman movie coming out, The Batman, which Ben Affleck is not even going to be in anymore. That's going to be starred in by Pattinson. He's going to actually be in there, Robert Pattinson, not Ben Affleck. And that's really depressing after seeing this film, because I said it in Justice League. Ben Affleck is a good performance, but you see that, like, they had so much on their plate that they really rushed through Justice League in terms of the story. And I think if Zack had enough of an opportunity to really just work with this single part of Justice League, and he had to smush it down into a 2-hour format, if it really came down to the wire, I think he really could have done that. I think he would have just trimmed some stuff up. But I mean, this is the thing here. You've got the villain having a totally different premise. Like, he is the villain. And what's really confusing is he mentions Darkseid, like, just once. And that's when he collects, like, 2 out of the 3 mother boxes. How he slides them into that stone slab, at the power plant where he's set up shop. Well, you hear him say, for Darkseid, and it's just kind of like, left, and then we're off to the next scene. But, Darkseid talks to him, and we even see this other character, Desaad, who's like supposed to be the right-hand disciple of Darkseid. Darkseid has dialogue. And when we see the flashback from the Amazons, you see that it was actually Darkseid in Steppenwolf's spot. That it wasn't Steppenwolf is the guy who was taking over and everything. It was Darkseid, and Steppenwolf is now coming to Earth in order to get Darkseid over to Earth. He wants to conquer it and then use those cubes, use those mother boxes to bring Darkseid to this planet, conquer it. They still do the same thing. They still turn Earth into a hellscape, as it's described in the theatrical version. But then they say it actually turns the Earth into that of the enemies, meaning like the user. So that kind of leads way to Darkseid being able to come over and have access to this world. So as you see, Steppenwolf is working on behalf of Darkseid. He is doing all this to redeem himself because he has failed Darkseid in the past. And you see how the whole thing just kind of changes, because this really is a story about Darkseid. And, he's really the Thanos here. He's the one pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And you see this in the finale of the film, which is just 10 times fucking better. I mean, holy shit, is the finale just... If you're going to watch this film, get ready to, like, fucking hold on to your socks, because the finale is so drastically different, it's not even funny, and it is so much better. And I don't know if it's because they wanted to tone it down for the violence, but Steppenwolf gets fucking beheaded. At the last minute, we've got Cyborg teaming up with Flash, giving Cyborg the extra charge he needs to separate the 3 mother boxes. And then we get the decapitation, which is just so awesome. We get the trident through the chest, which you see it in a much violent way. We've got Superman just stomping off one of his horns, and then you see just Wonder Woman coming in, slice. The head just goes in through the portal that Darkseid and his minions are about to step through, and his head just goes rolling right under Darkseid's foot. It is just such a great looking finale. And then when you look at the theatrical version, which, by the way, I don't even know how I deemed that finale acceptable, because it doesn't even really make all that much sense. I actually, watching it back, was like, what the fuck happened there? Why the hell did Steppenwolf's minions just all of a sudden abduct him back into his own dimension? I'm like, what happened there? How did I not see that? And the thing is, it does kind of make sense, but you kind of have to think back to the beginning of the film where Batman says that those bugs can sense fear. And what it's supposed to be is Steppenwolf is fearing them. So they take advantage of that fear and they start attacking him, which is just kind of lame. I mean, I guess you could say it's a little bit poetic, done in by his own henchmen, but I mean, we've seen it before. How much better is it to have the guy's fucking head kicked into another dimension right to Darkseid, so he's looking down at one of his henchmen and knowing that the Justice League means fucking business? I mean, it's 10 times, 20 times better. And the fact that Josh Whedon would just be looking at, like, I mean, how is he looking at, we got to change that. Well, that's far too badass. I mean, I get it. It's violent. That was another thing. This film is rated R. There's the word fuck being used. There's different colorful language being slid around here. And you see a lot of funny jokes being added into this, like when they're trying to sneak in to the military base, into Star Labs, where Superman's ship is being held. You see when Flash has to dress up, as a military officer. You see how he's like changing hats, and Aquaman has the joke with him, and also when they're trying to get by the guard, and first there's an error, and like just that whole sequence is so rushed that you kind of miss the humor and you miss Flash Barry's reaction. They've really just butchered and neutered a lot of those jokes. And you get a lot of really awkward moments, a lot with the humor, where I feel like Josh was really trying to like throw in as much humorous bits as he possibly could, but they don't hit like Zack, because Zack actually had the time. Now I get it, maybe it's not fair to compare because Josh was under that crunch. He had like, I don't know how many months to try to get it completed, because it was at the end of 2016, I think, and Zack had to leave the project. So, I mean, Josh had to, like, come in there and just, really just, like, crunch on down and just try to finish this thing. And I think it's a noble attempt, because it is a competent film when you watch the theatrical version. It's just that, man, I mean, wow. I mean, did they really, like, butcher a lot of the humor in the finale? And the other thing that we really have to talk about is I need to get back to the thing with Cyborg and the backstories of these characters. You have Cyborg, which when you look at the theatrical release of this film, they just really just neutered everything down. They get rid of the car accident. You don't get to see anything with his mother. You don't get to see how him and his father have not really had a good relationship, and his father kind of sort of makes up for that by giving him a second life. Now, the weird thing is, what's kind of interesting and a real interesting take, especially when you've got these two films, is that you've got Silas Stone, who is the father of Cyborg. This guy used the cubes apparently like off screen, used the mother boxes, or used the mother box that they have in their possession. He used that technology to sort of craft Cyborg's cybernetic appearance. And, that's an interesting take on it, I guess. They use the energy from it. And, that is something, that where you could kind of just sacrifice some of the the backstory there that's supposed to be there, but they go with the comic book approach, and it just works so much better because it just feels a bit more tangible. It feels a bit more down to earth, and you could kind of appreciate it. So when his father makes the sacrifice in the Snyder Cut, which is not even there in the theatrical version, you get a lot more emotion. You get more of a feel of Cyborg. And so, when the father dies, it kind of comes full circle. He sacrifices himself to help his son. And all this stuff with the father is just completely cut out. It's not there. And I get it. It runs a little bit long when they keep showing him at the lab and everything. It does. These are the parts where, okay, I could see why Whedon would cut this out, because it does go a bit long, and you could just get this out of the way with a lot of dialogue, being traded off by the characters. But it's more interesting because when this guy shows up, you see him in the lab, you see him talking in the apartment to Cyborg, talking to his son, and then when he gets kidnapped later on, you kind of just feel a little disjointed. You don't see anybody getting kidnapped. They're just like, oh, they're kidnapped. Him and the janitor, and and you've got a bunch of other characters that are just there, and it's like, okay, and it's just very sudden. That's like a good word to describe it with the theatrical version, because everything was edited up and different things had to be connected with the story to try to move things along, and the changes already being made, because maybe Whedon couldn't figure out how to condense everything down, so he kind of just made a condensed version of this movie that drastically changes the plot lines. But he's like, okay, well, the movie does make enough sense. It really does. I mean, a lot of people say that it doesn't make any sense at all, but it kind of does in a way. It's a much better story in the Snyder's Cut when it all comes full circle, and you feel so much appreciation for the characters and how everyone really has a built-up story. So when they're there standing tall against Steppenwolf, Cyborg has more to fight for here. His father is dead. It's his fault that the father is dead, that Steppenwolf, is after the mother boxes, and that is like a really, really poor choice to just cut out the backstory of a character where he didn't have a movie even planned for himself. So really, if you chose to have Cyborg in this film, as Snyder did, but he planned to have a backstory for him. So, okay, edit a little bit, but getting rid of the whole entire thing was just probably the poorest thing they could have ever done, because he ended up coming across as one of the driest, most boring characters in the film. And now when you watch the Snyder Cut, you realize that truly he's one of the best characters in the film, because he has this great backstory. There's a lot of emotion there. A lot of the scenes are very dreary in the apartment. He's scared that he's considered to be a freak, but you kind of see that, when he manipulates technology to help this poor woman and gives her money in the ATM, you see a heart there, that even though the guy looks like a cybernetic freak, he really has a heart of gold. And that was the message that was trying to be conveyed in the theatrical film, but it just gets totally lost, and you just have little deposits here and there of dialogue of how this guy feels and everything. And that's the other thing. The dialogue is very full and juicy, and it's not boring. Really, like, this is a 4-hour film where I really felt like this film kind of deserved the time a bit more than Avengers Endgame. I'm just going to say it because I really enjoyed exploring these characters. In Endgame, that time is just kind of dedicated to story, and they could have just kind of went through a little bit. When you've got time dedicated to characters, I have a very hard time, especially when it's done well. If it was done in the shitty way, then I'd say, hey, hack the movie up and edit it up. But the thing is, when you have this much important dialogue and characters being developed, and I'm enjoying what I'm seeing, and I'm enjoying learning about these characters, because I'm not even familiar with Cyborg. Like, I went in to Justice League in 2017 cold. I didn't know anything about Cyborg, didn't know about his backstory, didn't know anything from the few times that I watched Teen Titans and saw him there. But now I see Cyborg, and, there's interesting characters. Like, this is not a very popular character, really, until he appeared on Teen Titans. But now I'm, like, kind of fascinated by this character. He's a very interesting character, where, if they did decide to do a movie with this guy, it could be interesting. But we kind of have the origin story out of the way, and it's really satisfying in the end. So when, like I said, when you see them all standing together, you're like, okay, these characters have been through a lot in their lives, and now we're getting down to nitty gritty, and we want to see these characters triumph because we've seen what they've been through in their lives. And like when you saw Cyborg in the theatrical release, you're just like, okay, like this guy's just there. And let's be honest, these films bank on a casual audience, so not everyone's gonna be reading the comics and combing through episodes of Teen Titans to get much needed backstory and stuff like that. No, so it's very important for people like me and other people watching the film. So this was something I truly appreciated, and it was alarming to see just how much of this character was just destroyed. They fucking killed this character. And the other stuff that is changed, like as far as dialogue and things having to do with the fathers. Flash's father. Okay, I had forgotten all about this scene in the theatrical because I was like, was it even there? Because it's gone before it even gets started. You've also got this great scene with the Flash in slow motion that was very Quicksilverish, where he saves, like, this girl ends up being his love interest. You wouldn't really know that by seeing the movie, but those that did see the Snyder Cut, I saw that they really did appreciate it. Here's where he's applying for a job at the pet shop, and it's kind of sudden, but then you kind of see later on when he goes to talk to the father why he has done that. But this like tractor trailer is about to hit that girl that he's interested in. This whole scene where he saves her is actually really well done. I can kind of see why they would not go with that in the finished product because it kind of doesn't need to be there. So there's an example of about 7-8 minutes that doesn't really need to be there, but it is a very enjoyable scene, and the way how it's all concocted and done with the effects is very well done. And I don't know if that was one of the scenes that was already in there, and I believe that it was. But you have him going to speak to his father while he's in prison. And, when they're face-to-face on the phone, with the glass between them when he goes for the visit, the dialogue is just so much better in the Snyder Cut. It feels very disjointed and unnatural, which is something that I noticed in this film. The scenes that do run parallel to one another in the two versions, the dialogue wins just about every time in the Snyder Cut. Because everything in the theatrical version just sounds rushed. It sounds like they spliced it up. It feels like it's not naturally coming out of these characters. It's just kind of like something they threw together at the last minute. And that was the case here, it seems. So it's so great to see, finally, what these characters were really supposed to say, what they were originally scheduled to say in this film. And you see some other stuff that's kind of like the Willem Dafoe scene, underwater with Aquaman. Like, you really didn't need to have that. That was kind of like what I felt like an unnecessary scene, where he goes to visit the spot with the trident. Like, that was a scene that you could have easily, I could have done without. So, like, I'm saying there are some unnecessary scenes that don't need to be there, and why they may be enjoyable and they may not be boring. When you get a 4-hour, runtime, things like this that don't really need to be there, that they could easily be removed, and, you could just basically have the same product at the end, the same appreciation for the film at the end of the day. That would have been a smart choice, I feel, to kind of like cut the Willem Dafoe scene out there with Aquaman talking to him in the water bubble. I mean, they kind of really didn't need to have that part there. Another very big drastic difference I noticed was Superman's black suit. This I didn't really fully understand why they were going with the black suit as opposed to the original suit, but I kind of like it. I thought it was a very cool, edgy, edgelord, it was a nice little difference. And, because you see in the ship, that was something else they added in, the different suits that Superman had stored in there. So he dons the black suit, And you kind of feel like, since this is a Superman that's like reawakening, wearing a different suit, I I don't really know why they went with it. I don't know why they made this choice, but it was Zack Snyder's original vision, and it does look cool. So, getting to see him fight in this suit in what's a drastically improved finale, as I said, was just a joy to watch. So, everything all together was just excellent. And the thing is, this is all divided up into 6 parts, which this film was actually originally supposed to be a miniseries, a 6-part miniseries. So this also kind of explains the 4-hour time length. And if it was divided up into that way, you could kind of see why you may have a little bit of filler here and there. And then we get this epilogue, and the epilogue is just it's a joy to watch. We get this Jared Leto scene, which was not supposed to be there. It kind of elaborates more on that Batman versus Superman scene that confused everybody, and we see it's apocalyptic. This is supposed to be if Lois Lane died, because she's talked about being the key, and I don't know why this is supposed to be the key, why she's supposed to be the key exactly, but Superman is evil in this alternate timeline. But the thing here is Jared Leto, like, for all the people that knocked him as the Joker, I am not saying that he's as good as Joaquin Phoenix, but watch this scene. Watch him and Ben Affleck act this one out. It is a gripping scene, and you could say, like, yeah, a lot of this stuff doesn't need to be here at the end, but when you compare, afterwards, that Flash Superman race that they interrupt the credits for, you're like, get the fuck out of here. Like, this is just 10 times better. And they also then put in that scene with Deathstroke and Lex Luthor, which I actually really forgot about that scene. It's extended, and the dialogue is changed. And when they're talking, remember in the theatrical release, I had to go back and watch it, of course, like I said, that he talks about assembling a team, kind of reminding me a bit of the Legion of Doom from the Super Friends, if you remember that. And it doesn't hit as hard as him saying that he knows who Batman is. And when he reveals it, Deathstroke is like overjoyed in a very Deathstrokey kind of way. And this is a scene that you have to appreciate. It's like improved, and the mood is so much better. And he says, on second thought, this is a time to celebrate. Just, you feel it be a lot more gripping there. They just improved on so much of this film. It really is night and day. And like I said, there are a lot of things that are very similar, but different. The other thing which like threw me for a loop was the 4:3 aspect ratio of this. And I gotta say, the film does actually look better in this format. It looks a bit more clear. It looks a bit more crisp. Not to say that the widescreen theatrical release looked like complete shit, but this IMAX format, which I'm like really confused like why he decided to go with this, but it actually looks good. It looks better, and things are less cropped out this way. So, I'm all for a better image, and this is the way how he wanted to do it. I was just shocked that this is the way that he wanted to film his movie. I mean, because we're so used to seeing films like this, like even independent films, filmed 16:9. So this was very shocking to me to see it like this. But, I'm not a guy that really minds, because, I play a lot of older video games and watch older movies that have this screen format. So it's not really a big deal to me to watch it in 4:3. And if it's got a cleaner, crisper image, like I said, I'm all for that. So there you go, guys. This is definitely a recommendation from me. I really enjoyed the time I spent with the Snyder's Cut. I thought that this was a film that really deserved to be released. And I hear that the Russo brothers are talking about releasing a 6-hour Endgame cut. I really hope they're joking. It doesn't sound like they are, but no. That's not a film that deserves to have its own director's cut. If they want to go and do that, then that's fine, but I don't think I'll be watching that one because, like I said, that barely even deserved the time length that it had. It was a good film, but it wasn't very good to the point where that deserves to have that kind of running time. This sort of did because it took the time that it had, and like I said, maybe they could have scraped off about like 20 minutes, a half an hour here and there, and you don't really need the epilogue. But it's definitely something that is good to have. And oh yeah, and Martian Manhunter is also thrown in there. Once again, it's not like he really affects the plot in any way, but it is nice to have another Justice League member show up in there. So that's something else that I thought I should mention in there. You also have where he kind of comes to speak to Lois to try to get her up off her feet again. I guess that was supposed to be to inspire Superman. So that one, I'm a little bit unsure about. That was like maybe like another scene that kind of doesn't need to be there. It's kind of why I left this comment here for the end. But yeah, Martian Manhunter is in there, so that's kind of cool, I suppose. I'm not a big fan of his, but he did show up. And yeah, so guys, go watch it. You know, I watched it on HBO Max, and like I said, HBO Max also has the original theatrical release of Justice League, so it's very convenient. You go watch one, then you can go watch the other. Well, guys, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get all notifications when I post all my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. And thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.